Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all of our witnesses for coming and being brutally honest with you. I have to say, after 10 years of successive Liberal failures on this file, your Canadian lives and livelihoods are at risk. I think you've painted that picture. Conservatives want to restore your industry, restore safety to our streets, and crack down on these bad actors, including the people that are allowing this to happen. Now, I'm going to start with asking Mr. McKee on behalf of the Atlantic Provinces Trucking Association. In our last committee meeting, we heard how the Liberal government policies, like on immigration, were fueling Driver Inc. Is that happening in your experience? And second to that, you mentioned Crown corporations and government contracting with Driver Inc. Is that provincial government? Is that federal government? Please give us some concrete examples.
Thank you. So I will say that in terms of labor fraud in the Atlantic provinces, the preliminary data that we're looking at it's not as prevalent in the Atlantic provinces as it is in other provinces in this country. We also have preferred employer programs at the provincial level in the Atlantic provinces, which after employers go through a robust screening process, they are put to the front of the line for provincial nominee programs, for the Atlantic immigration programs, and for the temporary foreign worker program. So we feel that while there is evidence of immigration fraud and indentured servitude in this industry, I'm not disputing that. We feel in the Atlantic provinces it's not as prevalent. Where we're really seeing the issue is these fleets are coming in from other jurisdictions to basically, I would say, to be blunt, poach lanes from our compliant carriers.
Okay, sir, and you said Crown corporations and governments are utilizing Driver Inc. and also fueling it. Can you give me a concrete example, please?
I wouldn't say I have, a concrete example. It's anecdotal at this point, but we really feel that, there is not a screening process with the federal or provincial governments to ensure that these Crown Corps are not being utilizing this model. And we do know from many of our members that Canada Post is one organization that seems to be utilizing Driver Inc. companies when possible in order to save money. And we all know Canada Post is under financial pressure.
Yeah, we're going to need to talk about that more, but I have limited time. Wayne Long is the Secretary of State responsible from CRA. He's someone who says he understands business. He's from Atlantic Canada, from New Brunswick. Have you met with him about your concerns? Has he expressed any concern for your industry?
We have not. We've met with several MPs from both sides of the floor on this issue, but we have not met with Mr. Long.
What would you tell Mr. Long right now when it comes to the CRA, what he needs to do today?
We need to immediately lift the moratorium on T4As. We need to start creating a paper trail so that we can begin to track these guys, the companies and the drivers who may be shirking their tax obligations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Albus. And I'll turn the floor over to Mr. Muse. Mr. Muse, the floor is yours. You have 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is to Mr. Bylsma. The Liberals have talked about cracking down on this for years, and the problem is just festering. And actually, it's a crisis point now, and Conservatives want to fix this. When you talk about your business that's not going to succeed to a second generation, and you broke down the numbers very nicely, which I think which paints a very stark picture. My constituency office is 30 minutes from your shop, and so I know in that area that this is a huge issue in Ontario and throughout Ontario. What is the single biggest failure of federal enforcement that has allowed this to persist for this long?
Thank you very much, and through the chair, the biggest thing that would impact my presentation was mostly about the numbers. So I think the biggest thing the federal government can do is through the CRA, and as my colleague to my left said, is lift the moratorium on the T4As. What we need to do is start allowing a paper trail to occur so the government can find the bad actors. And it's not a matter of spending more money as a government, because the billions of dollars that will be collected by hiring the necessary staff to go track these people down and enforce it would pay for itself and then some. There'd be a significant return on investment for the government to go after that direction.
So would you say this isn't a problem of, a solution? You've mentioned one very obvious one, and there are others, and I know there were others in the CTA report as well, and the OTA has been advocating. So is this a problem of political will? Is it bureaucratic inertia? Or is it simply the government doesn't understand your industry? I mean, you painted a picture of the economics of it.
I believe, and this is my personal opinion, it's a matter of a lack of political will. We've been chasing this up the chain for probably a decade. This started in 2011 when they put the moratorium on T4As, and it's gotten out of control. Some crafty lawyers and accountants have figured out ways to work around some of the rules around PSBs and that type of a thing to create this lawless portion of our industry.
So it's as your colleague said, fraud.
Correct. Absolute fraud.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Muse. Next, we'll go to Mr. Kellaway. Mr. Kellaway, the floor is yours. You have 6 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to the witnesses today and the previous witnesses on Tuesday. This is an important study, and I'm glad that it's being brought here in this form. Most of my questions will be directed towards Mr. McKee, but I wanted to get a sense from just all three of you on a particular question. If the move by Harper to deregulate the industry in 2011, in hindsight, was a good idea, yes or no? We start with Mr. Bosma, McKee.
Deregulation is fine. Like I said in my presentation, I'm a capitalist.
Yeah.
I have no problem with deregulation. The only problem I have with is that there's legislation, and I'm part socialist. Like I know we have bills to pay. As a government, you have bills to pay.
Yeah.
But we need to collect evenly and equally from everybody, so that I'm paying CPP, EI, WSIB, employer health tax, et cetera, so that I'm paying my drivers for 10 sick days, 3 personal days, bereavement pay, overtime, and all of those things.
Yep.
But they should be as well, not just billing them as contractors and not paying any of those employee rates.
So that's somewhere in the middle. Yes, no?
So what do you mean?
Was it a good idea to deregulate?
Absolutely,
the industry?
it's a great idea. I'm capitalist, but I still believe that we should all
kind
pay
of
our fair
socialist.
share. We should all pay our fair share, right? So if I'm paying all those things, so should the driver and crowd, and they're having me for breakfast, lunch, and dinner because they're not paying for those things. If you want to give, and I'm not looking for a handout. I use the number 1.5 million.
Thank you, sir. I just have a few. I don't have that much time. I apologize. Sorry. I wish I had more time. Mr. McKee, was it a good idea?
Yeah, I echo the comments of my colleague. Again, as I said in my statement, our carriers are not losing because they're inefficient. They welcome healthy competition. We just want a level playing field.
Yep.
We want the laws that are in place enforced.
Right.
That's it.
Right. And Ms. Gagnon? Ms. Gagnon?
Oui, la même chose que mes collègues ont dit.
The same thing that my colleague said. I think that it's a good idea. I think everything's been said.
Last session and now in this session, I think what we're learning is that there's definitive roles for industry. The provincial governments have major roles. And so, as you said, you put forward some recommendations in terms of Revenue Canada, which was brought up in the last meeting. So I want to go back to Mr. McKee, just in a news release on your website. It says the provinces and territories have a key role to play in the oversight of the industry, and it can't come fast enough. So what role do they play, and how can they address this issue in terms of the provincial government? Because I appreciate we're here, it's a federal committee. You're talking about the existing rules that need to be tightened considerably, in particular in the CRA. But there's a whole other realm in terms of the provincial governments and their responsibility. Case in point, we heard in the last meeting with respect to training that individuals are getting 2 days of training and then being put on a transfer truck. How that happens in any provincial regime is astonishing to me. So I'm wondering if you could speak to the provincial side of things, and you can dovetail it into the federal side of things if you like.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So I would say that, from a provincial perspective, and we're having some measures of success with some of our provinces out east. So when it comes to truck driver training, there's the training site of the oversight of the training schools in each province. There has to be a solid system in place to ensure outcomes are good outcomes. we require our provinces, whether it be the enforcement people or our National Safety Code auditors through the CCMTA, to work closely with law enforcement and with the SDC auditors to conduct more roadside blitzes and to really focus on, roadside enforcement of this issue, because I think that's how we're going to catch a lot of these guys.
Okay. And we heard from some of the witnesses on Tuesday that the Quebec government is not doing enough to enforce laws and ensure proper training and cracking down on the issue. So do the actions in Quebec or inactions in Quebec impact safety in Atlantic Canada?
I don't want to speak for my colleagues in Quebec, and I'm really not, I guess, well versed enough on what is not being done in Quebec to point a finger. But I will say that any inactions, whether it be in Quebec or in Ontario, are certainly impacting the safety standards on New Brunswick and Nova Scotia and Newfoundland highways. Absolutely, 100%.
And I ask, and maybe we can go to Ms. Gagnon in a second, I ask because everything is interconnected. So when we heard testimony about some of the stories, Ms. Gagnon, that were previous witnesses brought up in terms of training and development and safety in Quebec, for Quebecers alone, that's got to be terrifying in terms of the people that drive the trucks and also the people that are on the roads that have in their mind that the individual behind that wheel has the requisite hours in, has the training in. So I'm wondering if you can speak to that in terms of the anxiety that you face in your industry, but also the people on the roads in your province.
Oui,
Yes, clearly, it's very stressing for us to share the road with those people. We're talking even about our own employees because, as I was saying in my speech a bit earlier, you have to learn about the roads, and they really haven't done so. They're there to do a job, and it seems as though they just found them a job, but it's a vocation, as I said earlier. Most truckers have that embedded in themselves from a very young age, and they grow up with the desire to respect others on the road, and now we find ourselves with people who don't respect the laws. They have vehicles that are not maintained, that often cause accidents, or they break down, and they don't understand what the road signs say either. Thank you, Ms. Gagnon. I'm sorry, there's no more time. I'll now give the floor to Mr. Barsalou Duval. 6 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, our witnesses, for being here today. This is a really important study. There are people dying on the roads and people who are working honestly in these jobs, and it's very sad to see this, to see that there's no action on behalf of the government. They just need to enforce the laws. To continue where we were earlier in the conversation, we were hearing about what the government colleague was saying, and he echoes what the minister said. It's up to the province to do this. And that's a bit what my Liberal colleagues are trying to put forward for the moment, to say that it's Quebec's fault. So perhaps a question for Ms. Gagnon. Most of these bad drivers, do they come from Quebec? No. No, most of these drivers come from Ontario. Thank you very much, Madame Gagnon. Well, at least the ones we see. Okay, well, it's not to blame Ontario, but I think it's a fact. Another question that I would have for all three of you, because you come from three different regions. Ms. Gagnon comes from Quebec, Mr. McKee's from the Atlantic, and Mr. Basma from Ontario. If I understand your testimony, you've all three seen the same difficulty with these drivers on the road. Ms. Gagnon, Mr. McKee?
Safety standards decline on our region's highways. I echo the comments of my colleague that our own drivers are fearful of their lives a lot of days now when they go on the road. Our preliminary data shows that from our roadside enforcement blitzes and from our looking at immigration programs and potential fraud that a majority of these companies are not domiciled in the Atlantic provinces. They are usually domiciled in Ontario, as my colleague stated. But again, where it impacts our carriers in our region is them coming and doing business in our region. So it's still a problem for us, even though they are not necessarily base-plated in our provinces.
Monsieur Bilsma?
Mr. Bosma, do you have something to say on the subject? You are from Ontario, so do you want to answer this more directly?
Very much through the chair. I would say it's going to be a joint effort between all the jurisdictions and the feds. In my opinion, this started with tax evasion, and it's grown from there, from one thing to the next thing to the next thing. So once this group of business leaders decided that we know how to evade taxes, then they started figuring out ways to cheat training, to cheat labor laws, to cheat immigration. So it's just something that, I don't know, I'm a Dutchman, so let's talk about dikes. The more holes of the dikes you fill, they drill new ones. So it's just getting worse and worse and worse. But Ontario, they've got a good start going. And I would say Ontario is doing things like the WSIB carrier audit has resulted in $6.8 million in assessments. The MTO, the WSIB, and the ESDC have had joint enforcement at the Whitby scale in Ontario. And one of the findings is 65% of the drivers that were pulled over were driver rank. The WSIB sends targeted letters to new startups. There's intelligence sharing between the WSIB, the Ministry of Transport of Ontario, and the Minister of Finance, but the CRA doesn't want to jump in the same sandbox and share that information. And then, of course, there's Operation Deterrence that Ontario put into place just at the beginning of this year, where they've had 48,000 commercial vehicle inspections, and they're on pace to complete well over 100,000 in 2025. Is that everything that can possibly be done? It's a good start. But like I said in my notes, we all have to get on this, get in the game together, and work together to eliminate this before they come up with new schemes and scams.
Merci à vous trois. Pour continuer là-dessus,
Thank you to all three of you, and to carry on in the same vein. I'm not a constitutional expert, but interprovincial transport is under federal jurisdiction. The CRA, which collects taxes, is federal, and ESDC, which is in charge of the misclassification of people who would have been classified as contractors rather than employees. There's the temporary foreign workers. All of these are the federal government's responsibility. And certifications for health and safety, once again, is a federal jurisdiction. And these ERDs, or electronic recording devices, are also of federal jurisdiction. I think you all agree with that. I just wanted to emphasize this because I think there's a tendency on the part of the government to send it down the line to the provinces. But I think there are many components that the federal government can act on. I'd like to know, regarding what I've raised here, you've put a great deal of emphasis on tax fraud. Are there other things under those federal entities that I emphasized that might be able to take direct action that's necessary? I think that, yes, there are things that could be done that are necessary, directly dealing with the businesses. When I talked about the situation with some MPs in my area, there was a lot of emphasis on sending this over to the inspectors. And I think the federal government really should visit the businesses to ask the proper questions and to put an end to this before these people even get on the road and get behind the wheel. I think that's what's important to do here. And I mentioned it as well. When you are renewing truckers' plates, why not require some documents proving that they have insurance when you're plating that truck? That would be more at a provincial level. Thank you, Ms. Gagnon. Now we have Mr. Groslo. You have 5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and dear colleagues and our guests here today. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to remind my Liberal colleague the Harper government made a mistake in 2011, and Quebec also made the mistake. They've been in power for 10 years, so this is incredible. There are lives in danger. And so I think we need to get serious about this. Ms. Gagnon, good morning. For the Conservative Party, helping our small businesses is important. Your business is 70 years old, I believe you said. So Driver Inc., what are the financial impacts of safety that you see in your business at St. Pamphile? Well, the financial impacts are major. They're significant. What we see in the industries is, first of all, the industry or the economy is not going well, and people have no choice but to turn to these people because they also have less money. So they're taking these carriers who are cheaper, and in terms of the price, they charge less, so we find ourselves without work. Those people arrive in our factories and they don't have the proper equipment for safety in terms of loading. For example, they don't have the proper boots, they don't have the right hats, and there's a cost to that for us. All of that safety level that we have to keep up, they don't, quite simply. So for us, we're parked while they drive under our noses and they take work away from us. So we find ourselves with drivers who are challenging or rethinking their desire to be truck drivers, because now we don't just have the same kind of work that we did. We can't give them full work weeks. And vehicles are more and more expensive, and so we're parking these expensive trucks while these other people are transporting our goods with units that cost them less, clearly, than what we're able to put on the road. There's Driver Inc. You talked about a Driver Inc. that was at customs and he couldn't open up his own hood. That's right. And what's really unfortunate for my employees is that they have no choice but to help these people, because trucking has always been a profession where solidarity was important. They're far from home. They have no choice but to help each other. So we find ourselves sharing the road with these people, and we have no choice but to help them. Otherwise, we can't move forward either. So we can't just cross our arms and say, well, too bad. That's your bad luck. But if we don't help them, if my driver hadn't opened the hood, well, the customs officer would have waited until he could open it. But did he find it normal that the driver couldn't open his own hood? No, it's completely unacceptable. It's part of the mandatory checks that are supposed to be done every morning. Every morning? Yeah, you have to be able to open the hood. So I'm sorry, but how many years has this problem been getting worse for? Well, I feel it more, certainly. I don't think it's been affecting us for that many years, maybe 3 or 4, that we've been really seeing a clash, if you will, within the industry. And do you have support from the Liberal government? Are they helping you with this crisis? Absolutely not. We have no support. Do you just have to figure it out for yourselves? Yes, we're left alone with this, and as I said, there are costs to this, because you have to be aware of the fact that these people who cause accidents on the road, I was talking about insurance earlier, they have to be insured, because now we're going to find ourselves with a truck cemetery all along the highway, because the pickup trucks won't want to go and pick them up anymore. What message is the federal government, Liberal government, sending to businesses like yours? Are they asking you to cheat or what? Well, clearly we feel that the requirements are more strenuous or stringent for us, but we might find ourselves leaving the profession rather than acting like these other people. That's clear. Thank you very much, Ms. Gagnon.